everyone, and happy Tuesday. I believe it's Tuesday. I always get mixed up with the days. Welcome to Dan Assor podcast live. I've got a special guest in the virtual green room waiting. I will introduce him in a minute. So, as always, just would like to thank my patrons for the support of my channel. So that's Tarsus Group, Hyve Group, 19 Group, Easyfairs, SISO, Rerusni Insurance, and Smart Digital. And obviously, you can watch all of my content and listen to it in audio format if you just go to Spotify, Apple Podcast, type in Dan Assor, and on YouTube if you want to watch it, again, Dan Assor. Just a quick reminder, you might have seen a post of mine from last night. I'm doing a 24-hour vodcast marathon, raising funds for eventprofs via Eventwell. Please watch out for my post. It's going to be a fantastic event. We're going around the world, 24 programs in 24 hours. If you want to get involved, contact me here on LinkedIn. So, without further ado, I'm going to welcome today's guest, Shaun Hinds. Good afternoon, just about. Shaun, how are you?
Dan, I'm all right. Not too bad at all. Your virtual green room's rubbish, by the way. No tea, no biscuits. Obviously, your people didn't get my rider from my people.
I know. There must be a way of doing that, right? In fact, what I could do, if this really takes off and I get any money from it, then I could start sending, champagne and grapes and all that stuff to people's houses for when they're waiting.
This is where it's going. We've seen a lot of. In fact, funny enough, we've got a little. We're talking to some people later on this week about this very thing. I mean, one of our challenges right now is as we look ahead for the resumption of real life events and the planning process.
Yeah.
One of the traditional elements of that would be things like the food tasting. Coming in.
Exactly.
And so how do you deliver that in a virtual environment? And of course, we've seen a lot of restaurants really get their delivery and cook at home model, up and running. Good, great examples actually in Manchester. A few firms that have done that and done it really well.
Yeah,
and now we're seeing it move into the event space. But,
no, absolutely, because networking and food, and we're going to come on and talk about events of the future, is obviously very important. Just to give you your full introduction, Shaun, you are obviously CEO of Manchester Central and Vice Chair of the Association of Event Venues, if I've got that correct. And I'm sure you're involved in many other things.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely right. And sort of a hobbyist clinician at the moment as well.
We're going to talk about that.
Available for minor, knee surgery, anything like that. I can help out. Seriously, it's fascinating insight into healthcare for reasons which we will indeed.
No, absolutely, absolutely, and I'm keen to talk to you about that. Just before we get into that, obviously you've been within the events hospitality space for many years, 20, 25 years. I'm not going to age you.
No, funnily enough, I'm a relative newbie specifically into the space. Actually, my current role, broadly 3.5 years ago was when I joined Manchester Central, and that was my first, I suppose, formal role in an event venue capacity.
Sure.
Actually,
I thought you did some hospitality.
Hospitality.
Yeah.
Hotels, hospitality, different aspects of the travel industry, financial services, marketing, a few other bits and bobs along the way as well. But this was my the first sort of formal events and venues role, and it's brilliant. I mean, you say things like it's the best job in the world, but it really is. It's great, and we're currently navigating a particularly interesting time, which I think will have some fundamental changes for all of us. But actually, the core fundamentals of what we do, what we're about, won't change as we come out of this. In some ways, I see an enrichment, but I'm sure we'll get onto that as well.
Sure. Can you just tell us briefly about the venue and the region it serves and the type of events that I guess it will do again in the future? So for those that aren't aware, if you can just bring that to life.
Definitely. So Manchester Central is the convention, exhibition, event centre in the heart of Manchester. We're a classic venue in a number of for a number of reasons. We date back about 140 years. Initially started life as a train station, one of the classic sort of for those that aren't familiar with the venue, but you'll be familiar with the sort of classic terminus you would see, St Pancras, King's Cross in the old days, just a grand arch of a building creating an incredible space inside, with the added benefit of being right in the heart of the city centre, which for us is excellent because part of the whole real life experience, particularly in events, conferences, exhibitions, the city and the area that it's residing in is all part and parcel of that experience. And we're really grateful and lucky that we've got a fantastic city of Manchester literally right outside the doorstep. But the Northwest is a rich area. When you look at people coming in, say, internationally into the region, we're adjacent to some world-class destinations, albeit in the UK, but you've got Snowdonia over there, you're not too far from Scotland, you've got over in Liverpool, which has its own conference centre as well, of course, but UNESCO World Heritage Site on the docks there, not too far from the Peak District, Yorkshire Moors over there as well. So
very nice.
Really incredible location, but a thriving city centre. Sure. In recent years has accelerated its growth and its development. Offering a great experience for people to live, work, and visit in. And so, we're proud to be a part of that Manchester offer. And as I'll go on to talk about, I'm sure part of my job, it's not just about physically running a venue. It's about representing Manchester and the region on different stages when we compete or we bid for a particular event to come into Manchester, by virtue of the great air links that we had up until recently, obviously at Manchester Airport. Aviation's obviously sort of suppressed at the moment, but the number of destinations served directly into Manchester, and then the proximity of the airport into the city centre, coupled with the rail network and the road network. It makes us a really connected city.
Yeah. And I remember I went to Manchester University back in the early 90s. And I remember sort of returning about 15 years ago, and it was obviously all pedestrianised, the city centre completely regenerated. I think part of that was down to the Commonwealth Games back in 2002, I think.
You see a whole swathe of parts of the kind of northeast of Manchester that have been redeveloped on the back of the Etihad Stadium and all of the work that went into the Commonwealth Games. Clearly Manchester is a city that's also had its fair share of tragedy as well, and part of the redevelopment of the city centre was on the back of the bombing that took place many years ago that really was the trigger for the regeneration, if you like, of that part of the city. It's a great city.
So talk to us about obviously that's okay. Someone's trying to get hold of you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the Manchester Tourist Board thanking for your introduction to the city. You've been in your position for what, 3 years? You said
3.5. Yeah.
Yeah, and so essentially almost a third of that has been during this pandemic, right? Which obviously started around 12 months ago. Can you? And I know obviously the venue at the moment is and has been a hospital. Can you just bring to life how the last 12 months have been? It might seem a sort of frivolous question, but in terms of what you've done, getting it to hospital status, just sort of bring that to life for the viewers.
Absolutely. I suppose it was around about Easter, it was about four weeks prior to Easter last year when we started this journey, and I think we were just getting to grips with what the pandemic was all about, because we were just starting to see stories emerging of obviously what was happening in China, the sort of slow spread of the virus. We were starting to see other countries begin to kind of to restrict events, in particular looking at Sweden and Austria, activities taking place there, large gatherings started to get banned, and all of a sudden it became very apparent that this was coming to the UK as well. And so our first priority was actually dealing with the effect of the pandemic and what that meant for shows and events that we had planned. And in the few weeks leading up to it, we had a number of, really interesting conversations with organisers who were unsure as to whether or not they were going to get their event away. And in fact, when push came to shove, we were midway through a build of an event.
Wow. Yeah.
That we had to stop literally because the country was placed into lockdown. So we were, the contractors were in, the show was getting built, but we were unable to open it. And so we then were contending, like every business was, with this notion of, well, we're going into lockdown. It means we've got to disperse all of our team and all of our staff back to their homes. So we, luckily we were quite well equipped for home working, as it happens anyway. We put a bit of effort into cloud computing systems, so we had all of access to all of our systems remotely anyway. We had a good supply of laptops and mobile phones that was already deployed. So the physical shift to a remote landscape for us was relatively straightforward. But little did we know what was going to happen then, because we were effectively closing the venue down. But then I was contacted effectively by the military, saying, "Look, we need to come and do a recce on the venue, because we're currently working on some temporary hospitals that may be required, and your venue's been identified as a potential candidate." And that phone call was the trigger for a sort of a 3-week period of activity, which was just stunning across the board on every definition of the word. I mean, it went from a venue which we'd pretty much closed down and sort of put into a temporary state of hibernation, right through to a phone call coming in, rushing back into Manchester, getting the place opened up again, getting the lights on, getting the heating back on, so that we could accommodate initially an advance party from the army who were doing their provisional assessment of the space. And that was, I think, on a Thursday. And then literally by the Sunday, we were back in the venue, really facilitating the start of this project, which was then about 3 weeks' time. We went from being a dormant conference and exhibition centre right through to being a functioning hospital. And I think people may have seen some of the pictures or the video of it, but the installation was an incredible feat of engineering and ingenuity, given that a fully functioning high-level support hospital was built in such a short space of time, but to very exacting standards in an environment which is, we're used to having temporary structures, but we're a 140-year-old building, lots of iron, steel, and little quirky features. Not necessarily the first choice that you would have to build a fully functioning hospital in such a sort of a critical environment.
Sorry, Shaun, you used your own existing supply chain for that as well. What parts of the industry were and still are? Because I know it's still a hospital. So
maybe we'll come on to that. But isn't this a fascinating aspect of our industry? Because in many cases it was the venues and the supply chain of those venues that were instrumental in building the Nightingale hospitals. Now, certainly in Birmingham and in London, it was suppliers that we know and we use in exhibitions that physically built the space. Manchester was slightly different. A different contractor came in and used different materials, but nonetheless, the team involved in the catering aspects of feeding a workforce, the cleaning team, the security team, a lot of the volunteers were all made up of people that would potentially in another time be working inside our events. So it was our temporary freelancers and our contractors that were coming back to help mobilize this great effort to create these hospitals. And even today, a number of people that would be normally working with us in events are working in and around the hospital installation in different roles, but nonetheless being a critical part of that support function. So and yet
the government seemed to have left a lot of those behind, right, in terms of financial support. So that's the irony, that the supply chain, the industry have helped, and yet
I think we could get very angry about aspects of this, but it is an immensely complicated and vast set of measures that have been put in place. But the reality is, some some people in our industry, in our sector, that have had perfectly viable and perfectly good and rewarding careers. You know, if you're jobbing between different events and seasons as well, you get people who work the summer season, they work the winter season indoors, summer season at the festivals. You know, all of those support infrastructural companies doing, whether it's rigging, staging, sound, light, catering, all of that, you know, many examples of where they have been left behind, and the different schemes that the government's put in place simply have not catered for their particular circumstances. And you know, there's a well-publicized group, you know, the Excluded, which is
Excluded UK.
Many event colleagues, if you like, and it is it's a terrible shame that the effect of this virus is having such a devastating impact to everyone, and you know, not obviously the health implications that come with it, but just this longer term legacy of the impact to business, and in particular the hospitality and events industry, and I include the broadest definition when I mean that, whether it's concerts, weddings, the stuff that we do, incredible devastation across the board.
No, I only mention it because obviously those are the people that have been helping across the country, lots of them, with the setup and the upkeep of the hospitals. The venue now, today, as we sit here, it's still a hospital, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. We did have a pause in the summer of last year where things started to calm down. Patient numbers had reduced sufficiently that the hospital was kind of hibernated again. But we were reactivated around about September time in anticipation of you know, if you remember, people used to talk about the coming of the second wave. And there was initially, I think, some skepticism as to whether it was going to come, but of course it did come. But since September, we've been one of the few Nightingales that have been active as a Nightingale hospital. Not, funnily enough, today, not treating COVID positive patients, but acting in a step down facility, so that once you come out of perhaps intensive care or specific hospital, you would then transfer into the Nightingale Northwest prior to then finally either going home or going back into a care home. And that facility has been servicing, you know, many of the trusts in the Northwest region. And today, you know, we still have patients in the venue.
Yeah, I was going to say, and for those listening, it's interesting because obviously then you've got the ear of regional government, and obviously, have they given you or actually have they contracted for a period of time, or is there any? How does it work in terms of?
How does it work? It's a great question. It's right now we have an agreement in place which puts them into a certain date. Got to bear in mind that agreement was done last year. Potentially prior to the situation that we find ourselves in, prior to the tiering system, prior to the current lockdown that we see ourselves in at the moment. So we're currently working daily with the NHS, and it isn't just the NHS; it's different divisions of the NHS to understand, if you like, the pathway from where we are now to some point in the future when eventually the Nightingales will be wound down and then will be recommissioned back to an events venue. But we, you know, at the moment that looks like Easter, it looks like sort of early spring, but I think the next few weeks are critical to that scenario.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, it's just interesting to know because, you know, as an outsider, you look at these venues and if you're in the show industry, you think, well, hold on, they're now a hospital or they're a vaccination centre. You know, how can they be contracting for shows in the future? In terms of the role and what your venue is going to be like when it reopens, to do what it's there to do originally, I put on shows. Talk to me about digital transformation and the whole digital piece that people are talking about, because it'd be interesting to hear from a venue perspective. I talked to a lot of show organisers. They talk about this 365 model of interaction with delegates and exhibitors. What does digital transformation and digital mean to a venue at the moment and going forward?
So we talk a lot about this, and leading up to, prior to COVID, we spoke a lot about digital. And you know, let's ground ourselves to start with. I mean, we are in some ways we're the ultimate analog business, right? We rely on people physically coming together. We are a space that's about connecting people, connecting ideas, really that hub of a spark of creativity and connection. So we're all about the live experience. There's no question about that. So when we talk about digital, it's about how we can use digital enablement to enhance the experience of either the exhibitor or the delegate or the organizer. And prior to COVID, we were working on a number of initiatives along those lines. One simple example is that we developed a hospitality pre-ordering app, for example, so you could order food and drink via your mobile device when you're inside the venue, primarily for some of the banquets and dinners and stuff that we do. And how prophetic was that? Because now, online ordering, table service is de rigueur, as it were. So we've got features and assets like that we will continue to develop. But your question was I think slightly more broader than in that, in the sense of what does it mean in an environment where virtual events have really exploded. A lot of talk about hybrid events, the combination of real life being complemented by digital, and that is a fascinating area for us as well. So couple of things we got stuck into really early on was the need and the desire to create professional broadcast quality infrastructure inside the venue to enable organizers, delegates, exhibitors to produce broadcast quality output that could be used either inside a live event or for the outside external audience looking in. So the first thing we did is we launched a concept around live from the auditorium. And again, it's all about moments in time, right? So this is, at the time we did this, we felt that actually we were going to have the part of the venue back. We would have our theatre back, our auditorium back, but actually we don't envisage doing large scale events. Again, this was pre-tiers, pre-lockdown, but actually, thinking about business groups of meetings of up to 30 and stuff like that, then actually we could do a great virtual event delivery with a small audience, and we could deliver it inside our theatre in a perfectly socially distanced protocol that would work for everyone. So that launched in the autumn of last year. Almost a week later, the NHS commissioned the site back to becoming a hospital. So we eventually were unable to deliver that. But in the meantime, what we've done, working with the technical partner that we've worked with, is we've designated some of our physical space to become permanent television studio. So for those that are familiar with the venue, we're made up of lots of different spaces, big spaces, small spaces. We've decided that there will be an area now at the front of the venue, which will be a permanent TV studio installation. And the purpose for that is to enable virtual events for those companies and organizations that want to deliver a virtual event experience in a professional way, but probably more importantly, to allow in situ real life event organizers to take advantage of that kind of capability. So coupled with the technical infrastructure that supports that, Wi-Fi connectivity, all of the cabling and everything else that's required around that, we've committed to significant investment around installing this facility so that once we reopen, we have it there as a permanent fixture. And what we see happening is that whilst many organizers and events have embraced, broadcasting, live streaming, if you like, elements of their content out, I think that we will re-emerge into an environment where the broadcast output has to be managed in exactly the same professional way that you would manage the real life element as well. It's almost incongruous to think that you can just run it. You can run a live experience show, and you can have a couple of live streaming guys running around with iPhones or whatever, and say, hey, we've now got a hybrid virtual conference. Absolutely not the case. Like any large scale real life event where you have television coverage or pay-per-view, there's an incredible amount of effort that goes into the production and the experience that the viewer has versus the experience that the real life attendee has. And I think we will see that repeated in the events industry.
Yeah, and that will require new skill sets as well, or new suppliers coming into the industry, which has clearly happened, which I guess is a positive thing. You know, if you look at operational teams of organisers, then they're going to have to get other skill sets and suppliers to work with them. Would you say, and thank you for that description, would you say, I don't know how much of that you were planning on doing before COVID, you know, maybe bits and pieces.
All of it, obviously.
Would you say that if there has been some positives to come out of this dire situation, that's one of them, that actually it's not forced is maybe the wrong word, but it's accelerated change that might not have happened?
Yeah, look, I think sometimes, you know, we're immersed in this this experience that we're living through day by day, and sometimes it is very difficult to see the horizon and to see the sunrise coming up, because you think you see it, and then something else happens, and it turns out that it wasn't the sunrise, or you know. And so sometimes, as I say to my team, you know, it's from where we're standing, it's difficult to see what it's going to look like when we get there, but trust me, when we get there, it's going to be fantastic. And you know, I try not to put an overly positive and optimistic spin on things. You know, it's not really my style. I like to have a blend of realism in there. But I think what this whole episode will do, it's going to be a great shakedown, I think, of the industry as a whole. And there'll be no hiding place for second-rate, third-rate events in the future, partly because you know, the market will change and shift, and whilst there will be an immense value of the live experience, people will place an incredible amount of importance on being in the room and being there when these things happen. But it will mean actually that a lot of the third or fourth tier events that may have just existed in the past and may have been able to you know, tick over year after year after year, maybe a few of those events won't make it through, because there isn't enough to make it worthwhile to take the trip, to book the hotel, and so on.
Yeah, because you're managing a risk, as we all do as consumers. So you know, if there's any element of risk, however small, after testing or a vaccine or whatever it is, and then I'm going to go and see my parents a few days later, whatever, it's going to have to really strike me between the eyes that I really want to go there and, you know, experience.
You're talking potentially about two different things, I think.
Possibly, I do that a lot.
One is, how can I put it? If we're in an environment where we're still managing the risk as you just described it, right? I think we're still in a difficult place, because you know, if you get to that environment where, you know, people are having to make decisions about, do I want to go to an event, because if I go to an event, I may put myself in harm's way. I think that's one scenario which I think eventually that scenario is going to go away, and I suspect for a period of time we're going to be living in that kind of transitional period. But what I was talking about initially was more about what this explosion into video and, you know, and Zoom and Teams and StreamYard and all of the other ones that we've been using has shown us, is that there are perfectly good and acceptable applications and if you like, endeavors that you can do online, and it works reasonably well. And you know, it may remove the need for travel and physical presence in a lot of examples. However, what we're going to see, I believe, is an emergence of a whole new raft of different kinds of activities. So a much greater increased value of the times when we do go in the room together. So you know, the importance of being there versus watching online, I think people will really value the fact that we can do it physically. And I think that will mean that certain content and certain experiences that will be reserved for the real life experience will have an incredible value to people.
Sure.
And people will strive and will want to do it. And I think what that means is that there will be a raft and a range of events that a lot of organizations, people, companies really want to be at, because it is so important that they're there. And that goes to the point about some of the maybe third or fourth tier events that just exist today. Some of those might not make it through. Yeah. I also think that you'll see an explosion of new types of events. I think we'll see all sorts of different experiential events take place, where we know what's happening in retail right now with the challenges on the high street, the incredible growth that we're seeing in online retail. Just today, I think Boohoo completed the sale of the high street brands of Arcadia, but have no intention of going physical with those. But what I anticipate happening is that you might see some of these Uber online retailers decide, actually, we want to create real life festivals and experiences. You know. You see it in online gaming, where online gaming starts in the bedroom, on the computer, on the laptop with the console. But actually, the culmination,
stadiums, aren't they? They're going to stadiums.
That's right. And so there will be this draw towards getting people, back into these live experiences, and those live experiences will deliver content, experiences, and just enrichment that is going to be a different level. And it's our job as a venue, whereas we may have in the past been a sort of a passive player in this environment, just providing space for people to come and start the shop. We're now going to be a part and parcel of the overall experience that those visitors, delegates, exhibitors have, and so the role that we play will be increasingly important, and the role that a city like Manchester plays to deliver that experience will be important. But I think obviously I'm biased, because I sit here from the position of running a venue, and there'll be plenty of people that are virtual event evangelists or whatever, that are saying no, you've got it all wrong, it's all going to be virtual, everything's online now, this is the new utopia.
It has to be.
I don't buy that, but if people want to sit in their bedrooms all day and do this, good luck to them. But there will be, was it Hamilton, where they say, be in the room when it happens. You don't want to be in the Zoom when it happens. You want to be in the room when it happens. And
in the room.
Look, we know about, what's great about the events industry, and what attracted me to it in the first place was that every time you stage an event, you are presenting the best version of yourself at that moment in time. It's the 21 event is better than the 20 event, let's say, but that the 22 event is going to be even better still, because it's forward looking, it's innovation, it's new, it's better, and so on. And I think that we are an incredibly creative industry, very innovative. And I think what we'll find is that when we settle down to what the new landscape looks like, we're going to see some really interesting, innovative and wholesome, without wishing to sound too pretentious, experiences that are delivered, but with the hub about the humanization of all of this, I think, is so important, because whilst there are incredible benefits coming from remote working as a result of this kind of technology, what it means is that the human angle, the human interaction angle, what it's about to be human and to live our lives, that takes on even more importance, because you don't know what you've got till it's gone. We've now experienced this time of when a lot of what we really liked and enjoyed and take for granted has been taken away from us. So actually, when we get it back, we're going to really care for it, and we're going to nurture it, and we're going to say, we're never going to let this happen again. So I am immensely optimistic about what the future will look like. I guarantee it's going to be different, and I guarantee it's going to be difficult to get there. But when we're there, it will feel kind of normal. And actually, the quality of the content that's being produced, whether it's broadcast quality output, whether it's just the actual experience inside a show, I think the emphasis on the organizers and the show owners to deliver fantastic content.
I was going to say, Shaun, have you what have organizers been telling you recently, in terms of their plans for the future? Because I guess a lot of this is collaboration. So you're speaking to them about the new facilities. Yes, you've got your own ideas, but they're the ones that are going to have to use it. Have they been bringing some of this stuff to life, and these ideas to live.
I think a lot of organisers are still kind of coming to terms with what this future looks like, and I think we're, you know, people are saying, right, well, we've got to go hybrid, but actually then, well, what's involved in going hybrid? You said it yourself about new skill sets, you know, new disciplines that we need to learn, and in many cases that costs more money. How do you monetize this situation if you've got fewer in-person delegates? You know, the traditional models of sponsorship, selling exhibition stands, delegate registrations, you know, all of those economics are going to change, but complemented by this massive audience potentially online that could be monetized either through subscription, either through pay-per-view, or more probably through advertising and sponsorship, because actually the content is so good that people want to align themselves to it. But a lot of organizers, I believe, are still working their way through those conundrums, and it's going to be a bit of an evolutionary process. It's like when online advertising first came along. You know, in the old days, we knew how much it cost to advertise in a magazine, we knew how much it cost to advertise on telly, we knew how much it cost to advertise in a newspaper. All of a sudden online comes along. Well, how the hell does this work? You know, what is the price for an online banner ad? What's the superstitial? What's all this? And then gradually it finds its place. And I think we'll see exactly the same thing happen in terms of how we monetize the hybrid and online element of the content that we're producing. But I think, you know, there are, I mean, organizers are going through all of those different stages, and I think there are some very bullish organizers out there that are excited about how their content can be adapted for this new environment. There are probably other organizers out there that are finding it a bit more difficult, are seeing it as a direct existential threat to the event that they used to run.
Sure.
In many cases, you know, their one event a year was a big part of their overall income for the year as well. So these are big discussions and big issues that people are dealing with, and we're you know, we have my team particularly has many conversations with organizers every day, and we're seeing the full gamut of responses, you know, from the people that are in a state of shock and fear and probably feel that they're never going to run an event ever again in their life, right through to new players, new entrants, people that are adapting their model and saying, right, this is going to be amazing. We need to do this, we need that, we need all of these things. And, you know, as always, it will be a blend of all of those things that make up the whole.
Shaun, thank you for that. Interesting. We had a comment here that's on screen from a Leslie Russon. Thank you, Leslie. I think we all sort of agree with that. Online is great to engage and possibly good for content consumption. But obviously you can't beat coming together, and that's the same in all our lives. Can you talk to me about your role at the AEV, Association of Event Venues, and more broadly, what's its ambitions for the next sort of 6-12 months, objectives?
Yeah, I mean the role of, I mean, AEV is part of a sort of a triumvirate of three groups, if you like, that represent the different parts of the industry. AEO, the organisers, V for the venues, and then Assor, which is the supply chain industry that supports it. And we kind of sit under an umbrella of the EIA, Event Industry Alliance, if you like. And it's been, I mean, when I joined Central in 2017, you know, one of the first things I did was got involved in the association, because I think it's an important voice for the industry. And then fortunately through being involved in it this year, I took up a role of vice chair, and I've enjoyed being part of the conference and stuff that we put together. But we've, you know, crikey, talk about as an association of, you know, being thrown in at the deep end, you know, because our agendas, if you like, prior to COVID was about research, it was about training, it was about skills, it was about best practice, it was about, you know, developing things like the e-guide, which defined how certain things happen in a kind of consistent and uniform way. And now all of a sudden we find ourselves, you know, going to meetings with DCMS and BASE and lobbying ministers, and, you know, Chris Skeeth, you know, from AEO, getting interviewed on Breakfast TV and all this kind of stuff. And so it's been an incredible sort of a journey from really, I don't know the best way to describe it, really. I mean, in the bigger picture, we're relatively obscure. You know, we're not known by the general public. You know, the AEO, the AEV. It's not something you bump into. It's not like I don't know. In travel, you might know ABTA, for example, but you don't necessarily know the other sectors. And what we found,
even if you're in the industry, I mean, I've been in the industry, and I've got to be honest. Obviously, I've heard the letters banded about, but up until the last 8 to 10 months, I didn't have much visibility, possibly because I didn't need to.
Well, you know, what's been fascinating all of this is that as it all unfolded, it became very apparent that the fragmentation of the broader sector kind of worked against us.
Yeah.
And you've got all of these different bodies, if you like, representing elements of what is the whole sector, whether it's festivals, whether it's stadiums, whether it's arenas, whether it's weddings, whether it's conferences. You know, we're all part and parcel of it. And I think it's made us have to sort of take stock of how, with multiple voices and fragmentation, you get an incredible dilution of message. And, you know, throughout all of this, you've seen certain groups emerge quite well. And I use that in sort of inverted commas, but the UK Hospitality Association, Kate Nichols, you know, she's managed to achieve a consistent and relatively high profile role. But interestingly, her organization was the amalgamation of two hospitality organizations which merged to create one voice. So that's interesting. 2 or 3 years ago. We've got the MIA, the Meetings Industry Association, which is adjacent to what we're doing as well. Again, getting some cut through in some areas, but not in others. But I think if we were to summarize it, what we've realized is that we're not getting that consistency of voice and that clarity of voice that perhaps has been required. And you know, we can all look back and say, yeah, we should have done this and we should have done that, and what if we'd have done this? But you're kind of learning as you go with the associations. And so what I think it's done, it's highlighted areas where additional collaboration is required. It's allowed us to combine our efforts more effectively, to make sure that we have one spokesperson that we put forward rather than multiple spokespeople, you're potentially diluting messages. And
so I think again, that might be a positive that's come out of this, that we now maybe have more of a seat at the table and a coherent voice if we need to, you know, have an ongoing collaboration with government.
Yeah, the way I think, if I were to summarize it, I think, you know, as an industry, we've happily done our business for many years, and we've gradually, in recent times, we've been, relatively speaking, being more successful. You know, we're doing better, bigger events. We're getting more delegates. We're encouraging more visitors into our cities and our country, and we're generating incredible economic value, you know, to the UK economy. And again, one of the other challenges we face is there are lots of different definitions of what that value is. And, you know, is it 70 billion? Is it 80 billion? Is it this many thousands of jobs? Is it that many thousands of jobs? But anyway, nonetheless, it's still a vast, you know, contribution to the UK economy. However, we've never had that dialogue with government. And it became pretty clear early on that because we've never lobbied and because we've never really had that voice at the table, we've just kind of existed and been taken for granted, that all of a sudden we're having to educate, you know, the lawmakers and the regulators on who we are and what we are. And, you know, one of our frustrations in the early days was, you know, we weren't even getting mentioned in the press, the press brief, the gov.uk media packs that were being issued at the end of a statement, a press conference. We wouldn't, if you looked, you wouldn't even see convention centres, exhibition centres. The events industry was conspicuous by its absence, and it highlighted to us, well, this is incredible. All of these people, these ministers, they come to our venues. You know, they come to the conference.
Yeah, they open up the shows. Some of them,
they speak. They MP, but and yet they seem to not know who we are and what we are. And so I think because we had enjoyed that success, we didn't feel the need to have to invest in lobbying, in understanding what BASE is all about, what DCMS is, who are the movers and shakers, who are the guys that influence Treasury, how do we get into Cabinet Office, all of this kind of stuff. And I think now we see that, and look, we're a little bit, the horse has bolted to a certain extent, but you know that isn't going to stop us, you know, getting our stable door manufacturing business up and running, and you know, getting ourselves better prepared for what lays ahead. And I think where we are right now is that we are definitely part of the recovery, whether it's the economic recovery, societal recovery, whether you're coming to a public event where you can just get together with people again, that's going to be important, whether we're staging an important show. And Dan, you might be aware, I'm sure, that one of the biggest high profile shows that's going to take place in the UK this year is the COP26 event scheduled for Glasgow later on in the year. And it's really important to government that event goes ahead. Plus, we have the G7 down in Devon, I think it is as well, coming up. So this is all good stuff. And it reminds people that we have, the role that we play is critical, not just because we're a few people getting together for a conference and a glass of champagne and watching a speech, but actually the effect and the impact and the results of the events that we stage has a much longer term positive legacy on the economy and on the environments that we operate in.
So, Shaun, thank you so much. We're almost out of time. We've covered a wide range of topics, and your passion for all of them comes across, and it's there for everyone to see. Couple of last sort of questions. You obviously lead a team, and you've got a very important role within a major city. How have you adapted? How's your skill set? What have you learned about yourself over the last 12 months? How's it been for you, compared to previous?
Every time I get on a Zoom call or I attend a virtual event, it just reminds me how good live experiences are. So that's why that's why I encourage everyone to do these virtual events, because the more virtual events people go to, the more eager and excited they will be about coming back.
Well, you're not enjoying this? You're not enjoying this?
Look, I love this, and look, and all credit to you, Dan, as well, and others, I think, in the industry that have adapted, to create new areas of endeavor and activity. And your 24-hour thing that you've got coming up as well is going to be amazing. And I think, look, this is great. And actually, there's been some really good connections that I think we're able to make by virtue of some of these video calls and seminars that we do.
Has your leadership style had to change, like, during this period?
Has it had to change?
What have you learned? Has it?
We can all do things differently and better, right? And I think we're all living through this experience. What's interesting in if you take a lot of corporate change projects where, I don't know, you get a new CEO or something like that, they come in, they come at it from a position of experience sometimes, and they'll say, well, actually, I'm going to take my company through this journey. I actually have been through it. I understand it. I can see the vision, and I've got the skills and the talents to kind of help guide it through. But the funny thing about this pandemic is we're all in this together. And I know that's a phrase that's been used, but we're all learning about it. We're all experiencing it in different ways. And, for some, there are very direct impacts of the virus. For others, less so. Like every company, we've tried to do the best we can with keeping communication flowing. We've tried to keep particularly as we've been a Nightingale, we've tried to keep our team informed as developments take place. We've tried to keep the engagement level. And look, in our business, we've got some people that have continued to work in the venue throughout this entire process, right? Even as a Nightingale, they've been in a critical support role. We've had other people that have been working in their jobs at home when they'd usually be working in a group of people in an office. And then clearly, like a lot of other event businesses, we've had people on furlough as well. But that's an essential part of of how we navigate through this, because we've got to find ways of plotting our pathway through it. So no, I think it's been an experience. It's not all been enjoyable, frankly. There are days when I'm really angry, cross, and fed up with the whole thing, and there are other times when I feel a bit more optimistic and a bit more positive and a bit more excited.
I think a lot of people, I think you've summed that up very well. Many people will resonate with that. Just last question: what event are you most looking forward to attending? It doesn't obviously have to be at your venue, but an event, people give me all sorts, whether it's a rock concert or something I haven't managed to do, but I'm really looking forward to doing.
Crikey.
Put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, and I genuinely hadn't thought of that. But I have to say, for the industry perspective, we've just seen Confex relocate its dates again. I think it would be great for us to be able to get that event done and do it really well. I think the industry needs that. I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we talked about this event that was in build when we had to stop because that show actually could be the first show that we run back in the venue, possibly. So it would be great to see that show. I think we've got some really exciting events coming up. We've actually got some interesting prospects for the venue in between once we stop being a hospital and prior to, I think, us starting. Let's say normal events start to look like it's going to be the autumn time, September, October, maybe before we start to see, kind of normality, hopefully. We've actually got a really interesting summer of activity inside the venue as well, which we're kind of working up at the moment. So we'll have to see if we can get that away.
Lots of good stuff to look forward to.
And we've got the Conservative Party conference coming up as well. Who
can forget that?
Which will be a great experience because
when is that again? Remind me.
It's in October.
Yeah, sure.
It'll be a great opportunity for us to remind the government about just how important a good professional event organising capability is to the economy.
So, Shaun Hinds, thank you, CEO of Manchester Central and Vice Chair of AEV. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure everyone wishes you all the very best. Obviously, great work with the Nightingale Hospital at the venue, and obviously your staff being involved with that. So, thank you. And we look forward to visiting the venue. I've been up there many years ago, I think, for an NHS conference. Actually, I think it was an NHS Trust conference. It'd be great to come back again when it's fully operational and to see all your new initiatives.
Well, we look forward to having you back, and what we will do is we'll do a live version from our studio of the new and improved Dan Assor podcast, which will be syndicated across cable television by the time we get there.
I'm just going to pop you back in the green room. I'll be back for a chat. Thank you so much, Shaun.
Thank you. Cheers.
So, guys, that was Shaun Hinds of Manchester Central, the CEO there. Thank you so much, everyone that was watching. We had a good audience, and obviously those that are watching on demand, thank you too. Just a reminder, guys, I've got Miriam Sigler of Ways and Means Events, on Friday at 1:00. So please join us for that. That'd be fantastic. And again, watch out for my posts about the 24-hour vodcast marathon. So thank you so much for listening, and have a great Tuesday.